sometimes you can look at a guy on social media and be like, oh, I wish my abs looked that way, or you look at some of these travel bloggers and you're like, oh, I wish I could travel as frequent as this person does. Sometimes it's hard for you to be appreciated for the life that you're living when you're constantly comparing yourself to other people. Which is why in this episode, we decided to take a look at the impact of social media on one's mental health. And in this episode, we have Ella, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Take, for example, there's a lot of people who usually make the argument that social media upholds, or people on social media who are really, really successful hold this standard, these beauty standards, and that kind of negatively impact either younger people too as well. Like, if it's guys, you see guys who are flexing their wealth on there, and then that may make younger guys feel insecure about that. So could you touch on that particular?
I think that there was a point in my life where there was a point, I think, when between 24 and I'm 26 now, turning 27, but between the ages of 24 and 25, I was at that point where I'm just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I'm trying to figure out my career, my finances are shaking, like, there are just too many moving parts. And then I would go online and then I would see these people, like these influencers that were around my age, probably younger, like, they had like massive houses, hella dollars, like, trips here and there. I was like, bro, I can only afford a trip to Superstore. Like, this, how are y'all finding this money? So to me, I'm just like seeing those things. And then sometimes I started to question myself, like, am I doing okay in life? Like, when I think about where people are versus like where I'm supposed to be, like, am I actually doing okay? And for that year, there are times where I'm like, I shouldn't compare myself, and then I remind myself, like, I shouldn't compare myself to strangers on the internet. And my therapist says it, like, shouldn't compare yourself to strangers on the internet. They're only giving you the highlight reels, just like nobody's going to come and post that. For example, something that people talk about is friendship goals or couple goals. And like, if couples are actually fighting, they're not going to post it on Instagram. You're not going to see that. So like, why are you comparing yourself to the best version of them? You're comparing your whole self to just like a clip of them that is good, and they're showing you that. So I had times where I was like, I feel like I'm failing, like I don't have a good job, I don't have money, like my finances are kind of all over the place, I don't have this, I don't have that. I think it just made me lose compassion for myself, because it made me forget that there were things that I was actually doing. There were things that were going good for me, and I was trying my possible best. Like, I just had no compassion for myself, because I'm like, I could be this, I could be that, I could have this, I feel like I need to hustle, like I need to like work harder, like see people are just living like what am I doing in my life? But I was hustling, like I was trying my hardest to figure out my life. But I think just seeing people and seeing them flaunt that, and just seeing all of the things that they had, I'm just like, well, my hustle is not enough. I feel like I'm backwards. Like, this, where do we go from here at this point? But I think something that has really helped me is, like, I've been going to therapy like on and off for years, and I think that has really helped me a lot, because I'm able to sit down and remind myself, like, hey, like, this is not real life, number one. And even if I had friends in real life that were doing okay and had all those things, like, you have a very different journey from that. Like, you have an entirely different journey. But I also do understand that a lot of people might not have that same insight, or might not have that same awareness, or sometimes people can't stop themselves from like thinking, this is a stranger on the internet that I don't know. I don't need to feel like I'm a failure because I can see all that they're doing. Something that I kind of wish more influencers would do is just be more transparent about certain things. So even in terms of like being a business owner, being a content creator, being like a woman, being a person of color, like whatever that looks like for you, like just be more transparent about your experiences, so people don't feel alone. People don't feel like it's just them. I remember recently, I was looking for a job. Let me backtrack. In 2022, in 2022, I did this, this Q&A just on Instagram story. I'm like, ask me a question. So I was like, oh, what are some of your goals? I said, the biggest goal for me is to find another job. The job that will not scatter my mental health. Like, I just want peace of mind. I don't want my mental health to be shaking. I'm losing edges. I'm breaking out. The whole shebang. I'm like, no, I just need a new job, and I need it to be remote, and I need it to be good paying, just like, all that good stuff, right? And over the year, every so often I'll talk about, my struggles with like looking for a job and job search. Because on LinkedIn, you see somebody open for work. The next thing, I'm happy to announce that I have accepted a position. Bro, and sometimes I see those, I'm like, I have actually, Derek, I am happy for you. But I've also been open to work for a while now. So you see that there is an issue here, because if there's something I'm doing wrong, you can just let me know that. I have updated my resume. I have updated LinkedIn. I have paid for the premium. I have reached out to people. Not the premium. I'm just for real. I'm like, I have paid for the premium. I am applying for at least 5 to 6. Some days I apply to 10 jobs a day.
You just keep applying every day.
Just keep applying.
I'm just
like, bro, I don't need to
apply.
And like, what I don't need right now is your motivational. Like, I don't need the motivational speeches. Because if you can just tell me what you did so that I can do just that. Because 2 of us were open to work together. All of a sudden, you have found a job. 7 months later, I'm still here. Make it make sense. So, like, that was like the job search. I remember being so like frustrated, like shedding tears. Like I had times where I was just really frustrated. Yeah. Like I'll come back home and I will be crying. Like I even have pictures where it was like my eyes were swollen because I cried so hard. I was like, this can't be real. Like I'm not happy at this job. Like, and I feel like, what you do for work sometimes can affect you a great deal because you're spending 40 hours a week with these people. If you're even living with somebody, that's probably more time than you spend with this person too, if they're also going to work and doing other things. So I remember talking about it on social media. Every so often I'm like, like I applied for this job and I didn't get it, or like I had this interview, or I've applied for 5 months, like I haven't gotten any interview. At least give me the interview and then not give me the job. At least call me for the interview and then not give me the job. But the fact that I wasn't even getting interviews, I said, because if there's something wrong with me, you can just
tease me just a little bit.
Just you get.
Yeah.
But I think just talking about it over the year, over 2022, I remember doing like a to-do list thing. I'm like, my to-do list today: apply for jobs, apply for 6 jobs, apply for 7 jobs, and then towards the end of 2022, I got a job. But then, because I was so open and transparent about it, I also posted, I'm like, yo, your girl got a job. It's not fully remote, but it's hybrid. Look, it will do. It would do. Like, that is
a win.
A win is a win.
A win is a
win. A win is a win. You get? So just like sharing about that. I remember people messaging me like, oh my God, like I'm also applying for jobs right now. Like, I really, really appreciated your post because it showed that it's not a rosy process. Like, it's not that easy. And this is just, this is an example, but I feel like I wish more people would be open about certain things. So just be transparent about real life things, just so people are not saying just the finished product or like the highlight reel and then they're comparing themselves. Because even if I'm like, say for example, I was balling, showing you all my money, my wealth, everything, you understood that a year ago, I was out here hustling. Like, you saw the process. Like, we kind of all lived through this process together. So I would kind of hope that when people see that, they're not as hard on themselves, because it's like, well, like, this was kind of the process and we got here. Like, I'm not doing so bad if it's taking me a year to look for a job. Yeah. Right? So, yeah.
That makes sense. In this episode, we talked about social media and its impact on our mental health. And I feel like a lot of us younger guys, like when we're younger, when we talk about social media and its impact on us, there's a lot of friends that we had, or not necessarily friends, or people who were around us, or we saw in different countries, who were probably the same age, living, showing a better lifestyle, and it's easy when they tell you, oh, this is just a snapshot of people's life. It's not real. It's just social media. It's hard for you to believe it when you're younger. So you tend to think or have this expectation that your life should look like that. and you start doing a lot of things and making moves that you shouldn't make, or you start having internal turmoil when you think about what your mates are doing across the world or different countries. So it's hard for you not to take that in and process it and factor into your own life, and makes it difficult for you to sometimes even appreciate your own life. So which is what made us have this conversation with Ella, and where she shared her own perspective on social media and her own relationship with it, and how it's a big part of our life now, and it's something we have to talk about. So today we have Zainab here, our therapist,
our very own,
to just talk about the conversation we had with Ella and your whole thoughts on the whole topic.
Right. So a few thoughts right away. I think Ella did a great job of articulating what some of the challenges are, I think, that most people experience. I really enjoyed her very funny anecdote about the LinkedIn. And the guy was, who got the job, and she said, I've been open to work, I paid for the premium, and it's all these things. And I said, wow, even on LinkedIn, in a place whereby it's meant to be like, oh, this is like, the healthy side of social media, it's often perceived to be.
Yes.
There's still some of those challenges. And I think, one of the biggest considerations for us, to understand in this new age is like in the past decade and a half or even two, there's been a reformation to several industries when it comes to social media. And I think even in the psychological field, we've also experienced that in the sense of like, research and, a new arm of psychology called cyber psychology, which kind of like, kind of helps us understand the impacts of social networking sites and social media, and its sociological impacts, as well as some of the psychological considerations we must have, because so many people around the world are using these platforms now, and so it impacts, it's a social determinant of health, I think it's beginning to become. And so in academia, it's something that's, beginning to be really heavily studied and researched, so that's good. And so as we continue to develop, we'll be able to kind of know a little bit more about it. But some social considerations, I think, that we need to have even as we move forward in this new age, essentially, or not so new anymore, is kind of the impact it has on our interaction and communication. Right. So, she alluded to something like, okay, I'm open to work. What does that mean? I'm online on LinkedIn and, representing yourself as that, social interactionism when it comes to like the use of emojis as a way to kind of show what you're feeling, and like, what likes mean on Instagram. A like could mean someone likes you or they like the picture, right? Comments, posts, reposts, all sorts of things, retweets. Our communications patterns have changed. It affects finance. It affects consumerism. Like you said, young men are, they have the fake rollies, like one of you guys had mentioned in the video. And then also, trying to buy and like outbuy the next person and have this new designer thing and that thing. Privacy concerns. We have legislations that have been changed. Of course, we have, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Child Protection. I think it's the Child
Protection Act.
Protection and Privacy Act, COPA, I think it's called. Just to protect children online. So we have to have those considerations as well for kids. Then there's also the bits about privacy laws and politics. Are we able to campaign online? Like, what does that look like? Overloading, people's feeds with like this, political advocate or this, politician versus this one, and how are we influencing people when it comes to the political landscape. So the social media world is a changing and evolving landscape. Like, we can't keep up with it. I think we've created, a bit of a interesting dynamic, I think, across the world that many people have to deal with. And so, with that being the social impact, then we kind of look at what are the resulting psychological impacts of that. I feel like I'm using the word impact so much, but there is a massive impact here. Like, I mean, again, anxiety, depression, of course, right away. That's a massive thing. We have addiction. Again, if we look at the way the brain works, let me just kind of put a little bit of snapshot to it. So you have this revolving like dopamine response. So you pick up your phone, there's a notification. 100 people liked your post. Wow, that's amazing. You're happy. You put your phone down. Dopamine levels decrease. You're not happy anymore. You pick up your phone. Oh, this is great. This person commented on my photo. then you put your phone down. After that dopamine high, it, kind of comes back down again. So we're constantly doing this, and a person can have a lot of those experiences, 5, 6, 7 times a day. That can't be healthy for the brain, right? So that's a huge aspect of things that, we kind of have to consider. Then, of course, there is aspects of like body dysmorphia or like body image issues when it comes to comparison of lifestyles. There's a bit about the identity issues, of course, as well, when people kind of have issues understanding who they are. And I think, we were discussing earlier about Erik Erikson and kind of that understanding of like, who am I in this world and what is my impact? And so there's 2 parts to that, which begin in adolescence. And so essentially you're looking at understanding, okay, what is my part to play in this context of the world, and what is the moral road that I want to go down, and what is what actions, what are the impacts of the actions that I make from moral understanding, right? And so a lot of these things kind of have a bit of a massive part to play when it comes to person's psychological health, and so we want to be very careful with how we use social media. And so some statistics around that. So, of course, anyone who spends more than 10 hours a week on social media, and you know what, our iPhones, I don't know about Android, I'm an Apple girl, but our iPhones actually have those,
Screen time.
the screen time, it comes up, it's like, you spent this amount of hours on there. You really want to watch that. That's a great thing to know, because there's increased levels of anxiety and depression if you're over 10 hours.
A week? 10 hours a week.
Exactly. So 10 hours a week, guys. Think about that. If you're over that, then...
Sorry, do you mind to say that again? So if you would...
So I'll read out the actual statistic for
Yes,
you.
please.
So it says... People who spend over 10 hours on social media per week are 56% more likely to report being unhappy, having psychological issues such as anxiety and depression, than those who spend less time on social media networking sites. Exactly. And then spending more than 3 hours on social media a day puts an adolescent at a higher risk for mental health problems or psychopathology. So, yeah, those are some great numbers. 3 hours a day.
3 hours a day.
Yeah.
I'm good.
You're good? Ooh, sigh of relief. That's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really want to kind of, consider how we use these things. And of course, one other consideration I think that isn't often talked about is just when we have things like social media, it's so easy to paint it as this like bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's an issue, we have to deal with it and all these things. Social media in itself isn't necessarily bad. It's what you do with it. So of course it's catalytic in nature, which means it can, speed up or, kind of exacerbate any other psychopathologies a person might have. And so when we look at some of these cross-sectional studies, like there was a study done in PubMed by this Dr. Igor Pantic, I think is his last name. And he was just kind of looking at some of the impacts of social media networking sites. This is a little bit of an older one, I think in the past 10 years, and its future considerations, right, over the next little while, like from that time that he did the research. And, the understanding was that we don't know how bad it's going to get, but we need to get prepared, for kind of how it's going to change the landscape of psychology. And another thing to understand is that in these cross-sectional studies, a lot of times we're not necessarily looking at the correlational analysis, even though something correlates. So for example, your use of social media, the amount of time you spend, directly correlates with like your levels in depression, or your scaling with depression, anxiety, or like exacerbated symptomology when it comes to like BPD or bipolar disorder, or any other kind of issues, mental health issues. There might be a correlation there, but that doesn't necessarily mean causation. So if you have any of these predisposed conditions, then you might want to kind of watch your usage of social media, as it can exacerbate some of those things. So now I think what I really want to boil this down to is really just focusing on what can we do to mitigate some of these concerns, right? So the time that you spend on social media, and also the content, you want to quickly investigate who am I following and what are they sharing with me to consume, right? These little snippets, reels, little videos, and things like that, they're great when the content, I think there's I don't know, a news article or something on the news about like
TikTok.
TikTok,
In China.
in China is like so different from the way it is here, and what they consume is different. It's all educational, and here it's not necessarily. It's like life hacks and like some
Amazon.
unproductive choreography,
Yes.
maybe, right? Or productive for people who are dancers. But I guess we really want to kind of curate that to our taste to fit what it is that we in areas where maybe we want to grow, or maybe ways to seek knowledge, or ways to connect with people. But we want to be careful in what we're consuming, and how much time we spend doing that. Books still exist outside.
How about
still
audiobooks?
exist. Audiobooks are great.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think that's, a social media networking site yet, but I'm sure they might turn it into one
Something.
some way or somehow. But I think that, we really want to kind of watch that. And also, if you suffer or are challenged with any kind of mental health issues, you want to really watch and assess for how that affects you and your use, and be a little bit more introspective with your usage of social media, and try to kind of, of course, get a therapist if you're struggling. Sometimes, I actually had a client who would kind of get news. Her news was off of Twitter or off of, and her entire timeline was just news, bad news. This bomb went off here. This people fell off a plane here. This thing happened here. Like, this war is here. These are all the details, and it's coming at her like, and it's causing lots of anxiety. And in her world, it's okay. The world is ending. All of these terrible things are happening around me. But that's not necessarily the entire truth, right? So for a lot of people, your reality is restricted to your timeline. If you change the timeline, maybe your reality changes a little bit. That's good and also sort of scary.
Wow.
A little bit.
Wow.
And then, we kind of look at the effects on children as well. There's so much to go into in that aspect as well, when it comes to like, raising kids in this new generation, because this is what they do. These are the equipment. This is their play, right? Happens on iPads and phones, and and of course we want to encourage, traditional conventional playtime, but also we want to limit screen time, and also the content of what they are consuming as well needs to be highly monitored.
True.
And who they are consuming those things with or from is also very key. So that would be my summation of the social media.
No, totally
Topic.
appreciate. No, it's absolutely perfect. Yeah, no, it's absolutely perfect. I think this was great. I feel like this gave us some insight, and I feel like it made us see the importance too as well, and to see how much this could really dictate your whole life. And and I feel like because as human beings, we are we're wired to negative stuff. Like some things are negative, we're wired to it, and we're just simply more drawn to it. We pay more attention to it. So, and to surround yourself all day and consuming the negative thoughts and negative content and stuff like that can just really put you in a really horrible state of mind. So I feel like this makes people more conscious, would make people to be more intentional, because I feel like that's what this boiled down to, just be more intentional about your use of social media as to how much you use it, and be introspective as to see the consequences of whatever you're consuming as to how it makes you feel, how it makes you think, or how you feel on that particular day. So this was great.
Absolutely.
This was great.
It's perfect.
For sure.
Yeah.